Christmas is tomorrow, so here at Coach to Win, we want to make sure we keep Santa happy. So we thought we'd give you the best messages, best lessons. It's a Christmas miracle of stories, something Ralphie would be proud of. Merry New Year. Here's the best of Coach to Win holiday classics. When I think about you personally, you actually have the perfect mix of what would go into being a good coach. Your mom was a teacher. She was teaching young kids. She was trying to find maybe creative ways to explain certain, problems to them. And she probably had a lot of patience with young kids. And then your dad was not only a scout, he was a coach, and he had all these great players that he was around at great universities. Those two things combined probably obviously had a lot to do with the way you are today.
No doubt. And they both encouraged me and my other two brothers to find our passion and go for it. My older brother, Jim, was a valedictorian in high school, #1 in his class at Notre Dame. He's a radiologist now. And they encouraged him to go for it. And then when I came along, I was a 2.2 student. Everybody thought I had problems, but they knew I wanted to be a coach. And my dad warned me, he said, you get in this business, you're going to have to move around. You're going to have to start at the very bottom. But they supported me and they pushed me. And fortunately, I was able to have a couple parents that were always there for me when I called and I needed something.
Do you remember anything like taking rides with your dad, going to practice, being a gopher, doing all the little things just to kind of be able to earn your worth and stick around with the team? Do you remember anything that he said you that kind of stuck with you?
Just to have mental toughness. He said the mental toughness is what you got to have in this thing, and find a routine. Know what you're doing on Monday. Know what you're doing all the way up to kickoff time. Have a routine in the off season. Have a routine during the season, and outwork people. Be loyal. Work hard, and it'll take you a long way, because those are two qualities that people say they have, but it's hard to bring it every single day.
Would that be working hard and loyalty?
Yes.
Yeah, loyalty is always one that kind of interests me, because how do you prove it? How do you know somebody is loyal? How do you know a player is loyal? How do you know an assistant that is under you is loyal? How does that manifest itself in real time?
Well, it's a good question. I just think it's a word you got to keep at the forefront of your daily endeavors. You got to think about being loyal to your family, being loyal to your job, get up early, work hard, be loyal to your profession. And I'm not perfect. Look, I'm not claiming that, but I do think having a certain loyalty to relationships, to your job, to your family, to the man upstairs, I think are key ingredients in sustaining anything.
I want to stick with your childhood just for a second, because reading up on your life as a kid and growing up in South Bend, Indiana, and traveling around, and your relationship with your brothers, I was reading it laughing out loud, because so many of the things that happened with you happened with me. There's two things I want to just discuss. First of all, it is the relationship with your brothers. Obviously, Jim being your older brother, now you being a middle child, and then your younger brother, Jay. Correct me if I'm wrong on this story. You used to beat the crap out of your younger brother, Jay. It was constant that you were just older, 3.5 years older than him. And finally, he got a little older, maybe a little wiser, maybe a little stronger. And then he kind of fought back enough where you decided that, okay, this is a bad decision to go after him. Am I correct on that?
It's pretty much accurate. My older brother beat me up, so I beat my younger brother up. And then one day my younger brother beat me up. So I was really in a hard place for a while.
The other thing I think is interesting, and I don't know if you remember this, we'll try you out. What is the Gruden rule with you and your brothers?
No hitting in the face. We did not hit in the face. Everything else was all go. And it was live. Man, it was live. We were in the front yard. I remember one day fighting. Cars are driving by. They're screaming at us, going to call the police. There were some body blows thrown that day.
Yeah, we had the same rule. We never coined a phrase for it, but it was an unwritten rule. And my brothers and I, we had the same fights. Oh, we had a fight one time where it probably lasted about an hour. My brother was a all-state wrestler, so he thought I was like his guinea pig test dummy, and he would constantly put me in these holes and challenge me to get out of it. And my aunts were called, relatives were called, and nobody could ever break us up. But the hitting in the face cracked me up because I think most brothers probably live by that credo. No hitting in the face. Everything else is fair game.
I think that's fair. The funny thing is what we fought about. We would fight about the remote. We would fight about things that really didn't matter. We fought for the sake of getting up and just fighting, I think. But I've really matured a lot since then.
Yeah, no, I think you're living the life of any guy who grew up in a competitive household like yours and has brothers. I think fighting was part of it. I haven't met anyone who isn't like that. So moving forward, when you go to college, you're playing quarterback, and then you decide you want to be a coach full time. How did you end up in San Francisco under George Seifert, Mike Holmgren? I think Ray Rhodes was there as well. How did you end up in San Francisco?
Well, I was a college coach. I had gone up to University of Pacific in Stockton, California.
Yep.
And my dad had been was a scout with the 49ers. They were having some pre-draft meetings, and he called me and he said, "Hey, Mike Holmgren is looking for a quality control coach." I didn't even know what a quality control coach was. I think.
Yeah. Can you explain what that is? Because I think most people don't know.
I think I was the first quality control coach hired in the NFL. A quality control coach is basically a glorified gopher. You break down tape. You might draw the plays in the computer. You distribute the game plans. You pick up the game plans. There's a litany of stuff you do. Come up with tendencies, analytics, all kind of stuff that fall into the quality control guy's lap. But I went down, interviewed, and that's how it all started for me. I'd been a GA at Tennessee for Johnny Majors and worked for Walt Harris, one of the hottest quarterback coaches in the country. I went with Walt Harris to Pacific. And when I got a chance to walk in the door with the 49ers with Holmgren and Joe Montana and Steve Young, it was awesome. Still the best year of my life was working for the 49ers in 1990.
I'm assuming those were, you said, one of the best times of your life. Just no kids, grinding away, learning as much as you possibly can, building relationships.
Yeah, I basically lived in the facility. I mean, I had a little apartment in Santa Clara, but the facility was so nice. 4949 Centennial Boulevard. I stayed in the office, and I'd go in there and get all the installation tapes over the years, and I'd make notes. I still have volumes and volumes of books of notes I took on all the cut-ups and all the installations of these great coaches getting it done. And that's what it was. It was discovering information. It was just so exciting to see the execution, the way they practiced. They were on the cutting edge in everything that they did. And they had great leadership on both sides of the ball and in the front office. It was awesome.
And so I thought it was important that our players, I always made our coaches, they come to my house first, sometime in the summer before season. And then each coach, I said, they got to be at your house. They got to sit at your table. Because I wanted them to say, oh, so that's how he talks to his wife. Oh, that's how Coach Nutt talks to his daughter. So that's how Coach Nutt talks to his son. Because remember, most of them did not have fathers in the living room. And so when I felt like I got them at home and they see that it's real, this is not fake. It's not, it's everything is upfront and real. And there's going to be times you're not going to like me now because I'm going to make you do right. And toes on the line, setting the first 3 rows, all those things. But if you'll follow this plan, it'll be the best days of your life. And so I'd always have this deal where 2 days, heat index 112, I'd go through the stretch line, best days of your life. And they'd look at me like I was crazy. This guy's a nut, man. I can't stand football right now. You've been through 2 a day. You know how awful it is. But I'd say it's the best days of your life. So what's funny now, Christian, 15, 20 years later, Coach Nutt, they open up the email or the letter or the text with best days of your life, Coach.
That is so the one quality I think you obviously have as a coach is your unmatched enthusiasm and your love for your players. And you mentioned this earlier, like you got to love it. If it's going to be this painful, you have to love it. Like if you're willing to go through, this crazy journey of ups and downs and no pay, you better love it.
Right.
And you mentioned, I didn't let you use your mom and dad as an example of, how you were coached to win.
Yeah.
Because I want to get to it now, because your mom and your dad were a huge impact on your life. And you talked about, you mentioned the deaf school. Like your grandparents were both deaf. Your father grew up in a deaf household, so he had to learn sign language. He ended up coaching and teaching at a deaf school in Arkansas.
Right.
And your mom, and I read your mom's book, okay? And it's called You're the Best.
You're the best.
Okay? I was telling my wife, I'm like, oh, I got to bring this book up. I was like, wow, Houston's mom wrote a book about her husband. And she was like, wow, she must have really loved him and like respected him, because how many wives are writing books about their husband? And I thought that was, I was like, yeah, probably no one's ever going to write a book about me. And you can obviously tell that so I'm going to read you this, and I'm going to need some masterpiece theater music, because when I was reading this, I knew exactly where you got 80% of your personality. 80%, because this is your mom right now talking about your dad. Okay. It says it's titled Traits That Made Houston a Good Coach. Cue the music. It says Houston was young and full of energy and highly driven. His enthusiasm was contagious. His ability to arouse enthusiasm in others was a great asset. Houston was dedicated. He worked energetically and unrelentingly with hundreds and hundreds of boys throughout the years, not only the deaf, but hearing as well. He was scrupulous in every aspect. He made sure that every player knew the fundamentals. He would conscientiously go over and over the little things, like holding the ball correctly at the free throw line and making sure the toes were lined up. Every task was repeated until it was done correctly. Here's my favorite line in this whole book. Motivation is a gift that all coaches don't have, but all great coaches do. That's, I mean, is that true? I mean, how do you feel about that? That's your mom's words about your dad.
I'm going to tell you something. My mother's going to love you bringing this up. I'm telling you. And I believe every word of that. And I believe that's true to this day. There's a lot of great coaches now. There's a lot of great ones. The greatest ones are, to me, are the ones that can push those buttons that motivate, take that player where he cannot go by himself. He takes him to another level. And that's what I always try to do, because I seen my dad do it over and over and over.
So what happens when a player is unresponsive to your personality and isn't happy? I mean, it doesn't matter what you say or how excited you get or how impactful your words are. He's not playing. He feels like he's getting screwed over. Now what do you do?
Well, that's a great question, because that's happened at every stop. Murray State, Boise State, Arkansas, and Ole Miss. It happened at every stop. And I really remember early on, Arkansas was really setting back, because remember, they had 2 horrible years with Coach Ford, who's a Hall of Fame coach, Danny Ford, who won a national championship. But they were 4-7 and 4-7, and they were hating life, and they didn't like football. Well, when I came in and I wrote on the board, national champions, SEC champions, they were looking at me like, this is some kind of nut here. He doesn't understand the SEC, and they were looking at me like, there's no way this guy can be like this every day. And if you talk to these guys, Chris Chikuma and Clint Sterner and Anthony Lucas and Grant Garrett, all these guys would tell you, man, we didn't know what to think about him. But it became habitual. It became a habit. And so to answer your question, Christian, what I would do when I knew I wasn't reaching one, I'd go by and pick him up. Get in. We're gonna go to Dairy Queen. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna go to Burger King. We're gonna talk about it. We'll grab a burger, grab a vanilla ice cream cone, and say, hey, look, I know things aren't going well. I know you had 2 surgeries and you had 2 different coordinators. Now you got some nut in here as your coach, and I heard you tell some teammates I'm nothing but a little cheerleader. I'm gonna tell you this: if you'll follow this blueprint, we'll win, and we'll win this year. You got enough. We got enough talent to win here, man. But it's an individual deal right now. Everybody's going their own way, and I need you. And I pulled on him, Christian, over and over and over. I pulled on him, and then it went back to that house. Come into my house. Sometimes you got to get out of the meeting room and got to get out of the football field and get him your house. Like, oh, the guy is real. And once they get that trust, it's like, I'll run through a wall for this guy, man.
Yeah, and I feel like trust and honesty is a big pillar for me when it comes to what I think is a great asset in a coach is honesty and trust. And I always feel like it's difficult for coaches because, you know, sometimes somebody else is better than me and there's only a certain amount of spots and I may not play and guys hold a grudge. And I just feel like it's harder for coaches to do that today than it was back when you were coaching, because I just don't feel like some coaches put the effort in. And this is what drives me crazy is that they're okay with losing a kid. They're okay with someone slipping through the cracks because it takes too much time and effort, Houston, to just focus in on one kid.
Right. It's going to that dorm room at 1 o'clock in the morning. I can tell you, you know, Jason Peters is a great example from Queen City, Texas. You know, there's times that we recruited him as a defensive tackle. He didn't like the defensive coordinator, couldn't stand him. He was getting ready to pack his bags. Randy Garner, who happened to be his cousin, was there on the team. Said, "Coach, you better go talk to him." I moved him to tight end. I said, "You're come playing on my side now. You're a tight end for real, coach." I said, "Yeah, I seen you catch the ball. Let's go."
The one thing that I think we've seen in some of the interviews that we've done is how important relationships are. It's how important it is like taking the time to say hello to somebody, you know, like shaking somebody's hand, ask them how they're doing. Because I feel like the one thing that I feel is a big issue, and I'm curious if you know how to fix it. Okay. How do you fix bad body language?
Yeah. I have a real hard time with bad body language because we would coach it very, very hard, because I would say, "Hey, Johnny, what's wrong with you?" Personal problems. You got cancer? No. You got a brother in Iraq? No. You have a torn ligament? No. Then you can't have any personal problems. And so my point was, well, coach, I got to go to study hall. I got to do this. I got an exam, and then I got to come lift weights, and then I got to go to a meeting for an hour and a half. Listen, y'all, then I got practice to do. No. You get to come to the weight room. You get to come to my meeting. You get to be a part of this team. You don't know how good you got it.
So even you're talking about Dick Vermeil, notoriously tough, a notorious hard ass, like from college to Philly. And when people, he confuses me sometimes because outwardly he's so emotional, he's caring, yet he is tough as nails. How did you kind of manage that? How did you balance that? The hard ass tough, you got to do this. No excuses, to the guy that is loving and nurturing, that has built a relationship that you so cherish.
Well, here's one thing that I always felt was very important with my coaches, and especially the tough coaches, is I tried to see them in every light. And so what I mean by that is, a lot of coaches have a certain persona in between the lines, right? They have a certain way that they're going to
game day persona. That you talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, game day, but just any time as they're coaching football, like, these are our rules and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to practice harder than other people. But then go look at that coach with their wife, go see that coach with their grandkids, and see who they are as a person beyond just as a coach. And so the unfortunate thing with Dick Vermeil is I got to see actually two sides of Dick Vermeil. My first year there in '98, before I was a starter, he was kind of running the show. And so that was Camp Vermeil, 2-3 hour practices, physically demanding. You know, our guys on Sundays were complaining that they were worn out because it was too tough physically. Then in '99, we brought in Mike Martz and we kind of changed the way we did things. And, you know, Dick kind of took his foot off the gas and said, okay, I'm going to delegate to other people. And then I got to see Dick as more the overseer and the head coach and the guy that would encourage us and lift us up, because his job was no longer to set the tone and be the physical guy and set up the practices. Now I saw him in a different light. So now I got to see both perspectives of who he was. Tom Coughlin, another guy I was with 1 year in New York, and he was known for the Coughlin rules and Coughlin time. And this is Camp Coughlin. This is how we're going to do it. And then I would go up, you know, and I'd be the first one there in the mornings or the last one there in the evenings. And I would pop into his office and we'd have conversations. And I'm like, this is not the guy that's coaching us. In other words, I understand there's two sides to this guy. And it's important for me to know and see both sides and be able to understand the roles of both of his personalities. I got to see him with his grandkids and playing grandpa. And I'm like, I love this dude. Like, this is, but being able to see both sides helped me to find that balance that you're talking about of going, great man, tough coach. But I understand the roles that both of them play and why they need to play both of those roles, or why they feel they need to play both of those roles. And it helped me to see the complete person instead of just one side. I don't really like this side. I don't like the discipline. I don't like the hard practices. But then I see the other side and I'm like, I see, he's making a conscious decision that he thinks we need to be more physical. He thinks we need to be more disciplined. That's what's going to help us succeed. So that's how he's going to coach, even though that's not the only side of him or the only part of him, that's in there.
Yeah, it was always weird for me when I would see a coach outside of the facility. It was really awkward. It was like, hey, how you doing? It was like that whole interaction was always odd to me. Like seeing Holmgren at one point in time at a Christmas party. I'm like, who's this guy? That's not the guy I know. Like, I don't trust this guy at all. Belichick, same thing. Usually one way or the other. There's never the only head coach I ever sat down with during lunch, because everybody breaks, everybody goes to the lunchroom, they eat, they hang out. The only guy I ever sat down next to me and we just started chatting like normal people was John Fox. It's the only guy. Yep. I thought I was like, this is great. Like he was comfortable engaging me as a human, which I thought I didn't even know how to act, or I'm not even lying. I was like, should I be honest with him on my opinion of the show that's on, or should I just say what I think he wants to say? I was only there for a year, but he was one of my favorite coaches just because of that one little 5-minute interaction that I had that just has lasted for me since I left. I don't know, years ago, 2006 or 7, whatever the heck it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, allows you to just have a different perspective of these coaches and see them as people beyond just the coach. And I think that's important. And I think it's important the other side is for coaches to see us as people and to understand we're human and to understand we have emotions on top of trying to get the best out of us as a football player.
Is it a must though? Is it a must? Can you coach without having any personal relationship? What if I don't at some point in time, there's going to be a player who hates the coach and the coach hates the player, yet they still have to coexist. What happens when that happens?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you have to like every one of your coaches, but I do think you have to respect your coaches. If they're going to get the best out of you, if they're going to be able to push you, if you're going to be accountable to them, if it's going to be a good working relationship, you've got to respect your coach. So whatever that means, but I do think a big part of that, just like you said with John Fox, is that it wasn't a long conversation, but the fact that he sat down next to you and was willing to go, okay, tell me about you. What do you like? What are you doing? Like, not asking you, hey, why didn't you block the 7 technique like this? Or why didn't you run this? Like, it's okay to be able to go, hey, I understand you're human, right? I'm human too. Like we're people. Like, at the end of the day, it's football. At the end of the day, I want to win. I want to help you be great. I get it. But at the end of the day, we're people. And this is a relationship business, and life is about relationships. And so I don't know if it's essential, but I do think it's important. Like, when I coached high school football, that was really important to me to get to know the guys and to have fun with the guys and to get input from the guys and to know that, to have them know that I was in this for them, not just for me. And so I think that's where the relationship becomes so important. Is it's easy to see when you get beyond the lines that, oh my gosh, this guy really wants what's best for me. Like, he really is interested in me as a human being and not just what I can do for him in terms of winning football games. I think that's really, really important, even though you don't have to be best friends, even though you don't have to be buddies, you don't have to go out and have lunch every Thursday together with your head coach. That stuff doesn't have to be the case. But I do think understanding that they're personally invested in you, a coach is personally invested in a player, is extremely important.
Yeah. Just to kind of go through your list, start at Northern Iowa, Terry Allen. Is it John George with the Arena League? Did I have that right?
Yeah, no, John Gregory.
John Gregory, that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
then Dick Vermeil, Mike Martz, Tom Coughlin, Denny Green, and Ken Wisenhut. Do you think that you're a microcosm of all those guys wrapped up into one?
But I think about it from the perspective of when I was at the Naval Academy, I had no intention of ever playing in the NFL. Obviously, it was like a far-flung dream. But the majority of us were at the academies because the NFL wasn't in the cards. Like, we knew it. Like, we knew it when we showed up. And then now with the influx of NIL and transfer portals and all that, it's like these kids, that's not available to them either. This is just guys out there who want to play hard, who want to put out the best football possible, and really just want to show the other guys on the other sideline that they're as tough as they say they are. And it's an inspiring thing to be a part of. And I think when you think about that perspective, when you think about everything that college football is and who's going to make the playoff and who's going to do this and who's making $10 million in NIL, they're like, no, all we want to do is go beat up the other guy across from me. That's it.
So why the Naval Academy? What was it about the Naval Academy that was intriguing to you?
Yeah, I come from a Navy family. My dad served 24 years between active duty and the reserves in a Navy town in San Diego. So I knew what the Navy could do for my life. Like I got to grow up in a suburb of San Diego. I enjoyed everything about that. I enjoyed watching the planes go over, seeing aircraft carriers, and I had that experience of being around the military from a young age. So for me, to have an understanding of what the Navy is, and then also to have the perspective of my dad, who was like served on the enlisted side, and he knew what it was to go to the Naval Academy, to go to an institution like that, what it means for the rest of your life, not just your college years, not just, hey, go play football there. This is a totally different viewpoint on where my life would go if I went to the Naval Academy. So when they recruited me, it was like a no-brainer. Like, I had to do it when I got the opportunity to apply, to get in, and then to go to the prep school, and then eventually the academy.
So explain to everybody how it works. I don't think a lot of people understand. You get recruited. There is no NIL money. You're basically on a scholarship, but everybody is when they go there, because once you are done, you are committing 4 years of your life to, whether it be the Army or the Navy, either one. Do they give you a grace period where, okay, the first year, tell me if you like it. You have the option to keep going for your next 3 years, or to say, nah, not for me. Could you break that down for us?
Sure. So you're pretty much right in the mechanisms. Yeah, the timelines, it's 2 years up front. Your freshman, sophomore year, you can still, hey, I have cold feet about doing this, and you have an out. And then, but the day you show up your junior year, you're committed to the 5 years post-graduation. You're committed to service, or you're on the hook for this education that you've been afforded for 2+ years at that point.
I mean, on the hook. So if you decide to bail, do you have to pay the money back?
Yeah. So if you decide to bail, or you get kicked out for misconduct or whatever it is, or if you flunk out, which, hey, that happens, you are on the hook. You got to pay back the taxpayer.
If they flunk out, you're paying me back.
Exactly.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the case. They always leave that out. Whenever I've spoken to a cadet or a midshipman, I never hear that part of it.
You don't want to talk about it while you're there, because you sign that paper and they put a big figure there. It's $180K after 2 years, and you're like,
really?
Like, I can't do that.
That's some pressure.
Yeah, if you flunk out, you're either paying it back, or you're going to the enlisted fleet and you're serving from E1. You're probably chipping paint and earning back that pound of flesh that the military's giving you.
That's a lot of pressure, because as a plebe, which you were your first season, your first semester there, you're a plebe. Could you break down the time commitment? Because it's insane, the amount of things that you are responsible for and the time commitment, especially if you're playing sports.
Sure. Yeah, no. So the moment you show up at school, you enter into plebe summer. That's what they call it. That's the basic training period. I think it's 6 to 8 weeks of just like intensive military training. It's not about football then. Like, even though you're talking about July, your focus isn't hey, I got to get ready for the season. Your focus is, I'm going to PT in the morning. I'm getting yelled at and I'm getting shaped into a military member.
You got a family of your own, and you have your own family, and then you got your lacrosse family.
Yeah.
Which one has a stronger pull? Who is pulling you with the stronger force?
Depends on who you ask. No, I think the thing I've gotten better at is compartmentalizing and being there when I'm supposed to be there, wherever that is. And
Yeah.
the file cabinet analogy is one that I learned a long time ago from my dad. And kids don't even know what a file cabinet is anymore. But you open one drawer, and if you open all of them, the thing pulls out, the whole thing topples over because of the weight. And they're built so you can only pull one drawer at a time. Don't try to do everything all the time. When you're at work, when you're at home, be home. When you need to do other things, whatever those things are for you. For our players, if you're at practice, you can't study. If you need to study, this isn't where you need to be, then let's have that conversation. You can't study. Here's to stop worrying about school. Show up, work hard, and then you can leave and go do your thing. And I think that's something, again, in just being authentic and do what you say you're going to do. When practice ends, it ends. Then yeah, go study, go do whatever you need to do outside of practice. But when you're here, be here.
I'm stealing that one.
It's a good one, right?
I haven't heard the file cabinet. You're right. And
you can't you can't take. We don't have file cabinets anymore. They don't know what it is.
In order to illustrate that, Coach, you may have to actually wheel in a file cabinet.
I might have to invest.
What if Staples sells any of those? I don't even know if they do anymore.
You need a file cabinet. Just put one in the locker room and see what happens.
You're like, oh, what is this thing?
That would have been a great first year investment. We didn't have a locker room. We didn't have a locker room back then. Just throw a file cabinet in there. When you want to make a statement, when you're here, just be here.
Oh, it's so true. One more thing. How would you advise parents when it comes to the recruiting process, when it comes to coaching your kids, when it comes to parental influence with their kids? Is there anything that you can share as far as what you've seen that works, and how much input and how much hovering they should have and how much they should stay away? Any input on that?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I am so grateful for the team that we have here. Our families are amazing. They're amazing. They are so helpful. They're amazing. I think the thing that we try to do, and again, it comes back to communication, setting your expectations. I tell my players that if you have questions, if you ever had that feeling of, that feels a little weird, or if you ever wonder what I'm thinking, that is your signal to schedule a meeting. Please do not waste time trying to figure out or wonder what I'm thinking. I will tell you what I'm thinking. I can't spend all day just telling you what I'm thinking. That would be a waste of everyone's time. But if you ever wonder what I'm thinking, ask me.
So you'll tell them that?
I tell the players that at the beginning of every year, but I repeat it throughout the year. And
do they feel like it's like a trap? Do they feel like, and they use it?
There's no consequence to it. You want to know, let's talk about it. And because that's been our culture, our upperclassmen have that experience. Hey, I feel like it's I feel like I should be playing. If you say that to someone, they'll say, go set up a meeting. I don't want to talk about that. Go talk to her. And that's what we do. And I think the other thing is that I say to the players, I hear this a lot from peers. I think a lot of people would advise, send your expectations to your parents, email them and tell them what you expect of them. I don't disagree with that. I think, again, you have to be authentic. Do what's right for you and your program. I communicate to my players, and I communicate to my players, I am not going to talk to your parents about playing time. You are the player. You're the one who's here. I see you every day. If you can't come talk to me, then that's a different problem that we need to solve. I'm not going to talk to your player. I'm not going to talk to your parents. I will, if they're worried about you, call me. I would always, and that's something I share with parents, I think have over the years. If you're worried about something, call me. But one of the first questions I'll ask the parent is, have you talked to your daughter? Do they know we're talking? We should involve them in this conversation because they're the ones we see every day. They're the ones we work with. I think the other things with parents, and maybe a caution, and I'm guilty of this for sure with my parents. We call our parents or whoever your person is when the best things happen and when the worst things happen. Like, you don't call your parents when you go to lunch. Just so you know, I ate today. Like, you don't tell them that. You call them when like the best stuff happens and when the worst stuff happens. And so I think as a parent, the less you interact with your kids. And so a lot of these kids, the first time they're going away is to college. So you don't see them every day anymore. And so the phone calls you get are not mundane. Like they're not, it's, oh, how was school? School was fine. You don't hear that anymore often. Maybe not for everyone, but you don't get that. And I think reminding parents that could be what's happening. You might not just know what the middle is. They're actually fine. But something really bad happens, but you don't get a follow-up. I have this horrible class. Oh my God, class is going horrible. But it's actually everything's fine. And then the next day they go to class and they're like, God, it was actually fine. Like you don't get the follow-up call. And so I think reminding parents about that sometimes is helpful, and reminding kids that's their parents' experience too.
That is so true.